Hi, and welcome to the Courtenay Turner podcast. I'm your host, Courtenay, and I'm super passionate about moving and thinking. On this show, we are going to dive into all things health, fitness, personal development, lifestyle, and political, sociocultural. I've always been fascinated by people, and I love learning from the experiences and stories of others. This has been a treat for me, and I hope this is enjoyable and useful for you. As always, if you have any questions, comments, or any way that I can make this a better experience for you, please don't hesitate to reach out. Karen, thank you so much for coming on. I have to tell you, I remember when I first told you about this idea, and I had this crazy idea, and you have been through this whole time, just such a source of inspiration, encouragement, and support. And this is amazing that now you're here and we're actually doing this.
Well, glad to be supportive. I think you absolutely, I have every faith that what you do is going to be terrific.
Thank you. So I want to start off with talking a little bit about your story, because I think this is really interesting. And I actually just recently realized this, that you went from, I don't know why I always thought that your advanced degrees were in science. I knew you started off a scientist, but you went into international relations and education and culture.
Right.
Which makes perfect sense to me now. But I'm so curious about this trajectory. How did you go from being a scientist to deciding you wanted to go into that?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I look at my resume and I think you look like one of the most scattered people ever. This has no coherence to it, except it really does.
Anybody knowing knows that's not true. But
right. it's not true. So my undergrad degree was applied math, which was applied. So I had science, I had programming, and I wound up working in anti-submarine warfare stuff for the Navy. I wasn't in the Navy, I was a contractor to the Navy, developing new sonar systems during the Cold War to find Soviet subs. So this was really exciting and absolutely wonderful work, and I loved it, and being part of an important mission, obviously, even though I wasn't political at all at the time. I just knew for a nation to exist, you need a strong defense. And so being part of that was terrific. And then we won the Cold War, and the technology sort of turned to, let's look into whales. And I love whales and all of that, but it didn't have the same weightiness to me. And so I got to thinking, so I worked in defense, protecting our country. How did it get to where you need defense, right? So how does, before you enter the warfare realm, what happens? And that's international relations. Yeah. I had grown up traveling and speaking multiple languages, so that was always of interest to me. And how do countries develop their own ethos? How do countries interact with one another? So that was just obvious. I lived about an hour and a half from Boston at the time, so I drove up to Boston. I drove up, I parked outside of the School of International Relations. I went in and I said, I'd really like to do this. And they said, okay. So that was my application process.
Wow.
I know. So crazy. And I knew what courses I wanted to take, and great conversation. I mean, obviously I had taken the GRE some years prior, just to have in my back pocket. So I sent them my transcript.
Everybody just takes it just to have it.
It was Saturday. I had nothing better to do. So they let me in, and it was just so fabulous. So that was international relations. Yeah. And then they said, you really ought to stay on and get a doctorate, but we don't have a doctorate program in international relations. So then what I got to thinking is, okay, so we went from defense to how is it that you now need a defense? And then I wanted to understand how people develop their identity, in particular, their national identity, right? What does it mean to be an American versus a French person versus an Italian person versus whatever? And so that's the path that I started to go down in that. And then it became, how do you develop an identity at all? So that became education.
Oh, that is so fascinating.
So it all made sense at the time.
No, it makes perfect sense. Why would you have it? How do you develop an identity that's strong enough that you'd want to defend and risk your life, right, for your nation? And
Exactly.
then, how do you develop an identity that's, personal, that would make you even think that you would want to do something like that and that you care about your nation? Yeah, so it makes perfect sense. So
Exactly.
what, yeah, no, now I see it. I see the trajectory. So what did you discover in your studies on education that may have been surprising, prior to you going into that?
Well, it was all surprising because, again, this trajectory, and I kept calling up my professors and saying, I don't know anything about this. I was a math person. My international relations guy, I'd say, everyone else knows all this stuff about international relations. I don't know anything. He said, you'll be fine. You'll be fine. Education, I said too, I don't know anything about education. And they said, you'll be fine. You'll be fine. So when I came in, not having a background in it, it made, I looked at everything with a completely different perspective as my whole cohort. And at the time, believe it or not, I was not at all political. I didn't understand that things were a left-right paradigm and so on. So I just didn't understand. So the biggest outcomes of this was I learned about the left-right paradigm. Obviously, my gut was conservative. For example, I'd pick up a book. They said, these are the books the kids are reading. That's how I did my research. What are kids reading? That was what it wound up being. And I'd read this and I'd say, this is unbelievably horrible. The messages that kids are learning from these books are a travesty. And so I went and talked to librarians thinking they must be equally horrified. And they were not at all horrified. I went to talk to English teachers. They would open a book, for example, would open with the pornographic paragraph.
Okay.
Yes, I'm not even kidding. This is stuff that, if you were to try to publish it in a newspaper, they would say, no, I'm sorry, we can't. And this was being given to high school kids, middle school kids to read.
Wow.
Right? Wow, indeed. And so all this development of identity, they would give kids books to read because kids are supposed to read. It's reading, but the content of the books was appalling. And this is how, right, the whole purpose of this was, how do you develop your identity?
Yeah.
What you're learning is girls have no brains. This is books written for girls. There's no self-agency. Their identity is strictly in the context of their sexual identity. And I don't mean going down the LGBT path. This was before that. Just how they are with boys, like how you grow as an individual after some trauma is to have sex with someone. Yes. And
it's being taught in the books that you were reading.
These were
messages
fiction. This was fiction books that were given by school librarians or assigned by teachers in middle school and high school.
Wow.
It was astounding. And I kept expecting people to be as horrified as me. And they weren't. And that's when I realized I just don't see things the same way. And it really was a leftist, Marxist, family-breaking, identity-breaking, relationship-breaking agenda that they were teaching. And interestingly, for boys, there weren't many books for boys, like at all. Teachers, librarians, and authors would say, and publishers would say, well, we don't really publish boys' books because boys don't read. Well, boys obviously aren't going to read the stuff that you're publishing. So among boys' books that they wound up loving in my survey were the number one book, and you're going to appreciate this, was The Odyssey.
Ah, amazing. Really?
Right? Really. So when kids are given the opportunity, they eat it up.
Wow. How amazing.
Yeah.
And it makes perfect sense, but like today I think a lot of people think of The Odyssey as like, that's it's so long, it's so dense, it's so archaic,
Even then, that was the feeling. Even then, so I finished my dissertation in 2007. So even then, like, they wouldn't have people read Shakespeare, and it wasn't, or seldom, and it wasn't common to have them read the Odyssey for those exact reasons you cite. It's too heavy, it's too long, it's too difficult, they're not going to like it. And I heard this all the time. But among those kids who did have a class with the Odyssey, that was their favorite book.
It resonates with human nature. Yeah.
Exactly right.
So, okay, now this is very interesting to me, because I understand why you saw, this Marxist correlation, and you discovered the left-right paradigm through seeing what books they were advising the kids to read. But at the time, did you know that? How did you discover that this was part of a Marxist agenda?
Much later. So not at all during that process.
Okay, so in that process, it was more of just a gut reaction of.
Yeah. And at the time when I was finishing it, I was also a teacher. So I was teaching in middle school. So, and my kids were of that age. So I had this on a multiple fronts where I just kept thinking, I don't see the world the same way as these people. And I didn't understand why that was. And I was just horrified all the time. My own children were being handed these books. My students were being handed these books. I talked to the school librarian about stuff, and she would say, oh yeah, I gave them this book. I think they'll like it. I mean, it was an onslaught. And no support on my side at all. And what I kept bumping into was how content didn't matter. It was all the packaging. It was all their reading. And the title of my dissertation became "At Least They Read," because I would say, but this book, really? You're having little Joey read this book? And, at least he's reading. And so at the end, when I was all done, because I was in an unusual program, I wasn't in the social department, I wasn't in any particular, I was in this other weird thing. So it was hard to know what the next steps were. And I was referred to a guy in the School of Ed, and he sat me down and he said, I'm going to tell you something that's not going to make you very happy. I said, oh, what's that? He said, this is all it turns out this is a conservative viewpoint. And I didn't really care one way or another. This is how naive I was. Okay, I don't care, whatever. I don't care. This is a horrible thing.
Point. I'm horrified.
Yeah. Right. And he was really great. And he actually referred me to the Institute of Intercollegiate Studies Institute, ISI. And so he said, I think they'd be interested in publishing this. And still, I reframed it, and I still didn't understand that it was politically anything. I was just so stupid. And then it took a while reading other books and then realizing I am just square in the middle of leftism. It took me even longer to apply the word Marxism.
That's amazing.
And it's amazing how stupid and naive I was. I just can't even.
I don't think that at all. What I think is amazing is that you came to your own viewpoint despite all the odds, and you were still so steadfast in your conviction, regardless of where the fact that you clearly were having no support. And then you found somebody who was like, this is what's going on. And here's the path for you, and I'm going to support you in it.
Right.
Which I think is incredible. I had very much the opposite experience. So my whole academic career was like, constantly, I felt like it was always in this uphill battle. Wait, I've got this idea. And they're like, wait, you don't think that, communist dictators who are mass murderers are the most incredible thing on earth? So we're going to fail you, what I mean? And I'm exaggerating a little bit, but not that much. So
no, right. Yeah. You're right. And actually, so there was him who was supportive, and all of this is just regarding how my thesis advisor, it turns out, was very much on the right. Again, we never talked about it, but that's the only way this could have happened.
Yeah, no, of course.
Because I came to her and I said, look at this. I was so horrified. And she said, oh my gosh. And she just supported me the whole way through. Again, not talking politics at all. It was really about the kids. It was about education. It was about developing their minds. So in that framework, there was really no way to turn it any other way. You know, how can you? Well, that's not true, because all the librarians and everybody did try to turn it the other way. But she was a scholar, right?
Well, I definitely want to get back to that. But before we get to that, I want to ask you a question that's kind of aligned with this, because what you're addressing is a bit of a cultural perspective. And so you were the first, you were one of the first women to be on combatant ships?
Yeah.
You can explain
Navy combatant ships. When
Yeah.
I was doing anti-submarine warfare back in the day, this was Cold War, Ronald Reagan's ramping up of everything. We were finding Soviet subs. And I started just doing programming and stuff. And they said, well, you know, you should bring your system to sea. And this was, I guess, February in the early 80s. And that was not yet a Navy combatant. That was a civilian ship. And the first ship I was supposed to be on, they didn't let me. They actually said, no, we don't have women on board. We just don't. And so they put me on it. There was like 7 ships involved. So they put me on a different ship. So that's fine. And I did that a couple of times. And then another exercise, we had a Navy ship, and they had to fight all the way up to, you know, multiple star generals to allow me to be on board, a woman on a Navy combatant. Women had been on supply ships and that kind of thing, but I was on frigates, I was on destroyers, the only woman. And I knew that if things didn't go well with me, it could be difficult for women forevermore.
Wow.
Right? I mean, like it or not, I was the guy. I was the tip of the spear, so to speak.
Yeah.
And it was an amazing experience. And I learned just so much respect for these guys. And it's not an easy life. This was peacetime. You know, we never thought we'd be at war again. We'd been at peace forever. So much respect for them and the lives that they lead, and how difficult it is for the families and so on.
Sure.
And looking back, yeah, I have this argument with myself kind of a lot. I know that how I was made it easier for women who followed, and I'm not proud of that. At my experience, I don't know how I feel about women being on Navy combatants.
Interesting. So this leads into my next question, actually, because I'm really curious. You are clearly a very strong-willed, strong-minded, pioneering woman. You have 2 daughters, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, clearly you think women are very capable, and you yourself obviously are. But I'm really curious what your perspective on feminism is, and hearing you say this. Yeah.
Yeah, well, back in the day, anything anybody can do, I can do. Don't get in my way. I was math major, right? There weren't many women in math. I didn't care. It was the thing that I could do. I tended to compete, generally speaking, you know, with boys. I was a science person. This is just how my brain works, and that's just the way it is. And when I was doing science and you could go to sea, why would I not? I always did feel myself as a feminist in terms of let's be equal. But the reality is we're not, you know, and there are certain environments where women participating, it's not really a good thing. And I know that the tone of what was going on a Navy ship changed when I was there. And I could say, and I did say, that's not my problem, that's their problem. But it's a problem. We're war fighting, you know? So, you know, you can make all the arguments you want. I should be able to. Well, maybe yes, maybe no. There are things that women, you know, modern day notwithstanding, it's women who have children, and maybe it's men who should be doing the war fighting. And I think war fighting changes when you have women involved in the trenches, or, it's just not going to be the same thing. At least it's a conversation that should happen more than it does happen. The conversation, I mean, because it's not just about fairness to women. It's about fairness to men. It's about fairness to the wives. One of the times I was at sea, we were sailing out of Manhattan on this huge destroyer, and all the sailors were on the deck as we were steaming out, and all their families were waving goodbye. And somebody came up to me and said, "You ought to go below decks, because it's going to be hard on the women if they see you." And I had not considered that. And it could have gone one of two ways. No, I'm here, I have every right to be here. But I didn't. I completely saw the wisdom of what they were saying, and I didn't want to make it difficult for anybody. That wasn't my purpose. So I did. I went below decks. But imagine your husband sailing off with 50 women. Yeah. It's really going to be, and it is, and they write pregnancy numbers and all of that. So I like to imagine we're all the same, but the reality is we're not.
Right.
And if war fighting is the thing, I don't know that having women on board, much as I was good at my job,
sure,
I don't know.
Yeah.
If somebody had, well, they did, they told me I couldn't go, and it made me angry. So I get the fight.
Yeah.
But it's more complicated.
Yeah. And I think that's exactly it. Is people want to make everything black and white. It's a binary, very simple kind of. And the reality is most things aren't. They're just much more nuanced than that. So.
They really, really are. And mostly the men I was at sea with were great. But I could see how it really was, no matter how anything I was, just keeping to myself and so on. Yeah. It changes the tone.
Sure.
Let alone finding a bathroom. I got to tell you. There were
logistics, minor details. Yeah, I can imagine that was quite challenging. Yeah. Most men don't really have to worry about that. Yeah.
No, it was really kind of funny. Yeah. Kind of.
So let's go back to education.
Yeah.
What over the years, what have you learned is the role of education in forming an identity? It's everything. Question. Give me a one-word answer. Sorry.
Well, it's everything.
Yeah.
There's curriculum, right? There's the books that you read. There's the stuff that you study. What is that? Do you learn America is evil? Do you learn America is great? Do you learn unfettered immigration is really the right thing, or that nations have a right to have borders? Do you learn science is all about climate change and consensus driven, or do you learn inquiry? How important is it to learn other languages or so on? What books do you read? So there's all of that. There's curriculum. Then there's the general ethos of the school. Is it a community? Is respect taught? Do you address your teachers by their first name? Is it all very informal? Is nobody more informed than another, including the teacher? I've seen this too. We're all the same here. Again, that's such nonsense. No, we're not. I'm sorry.
And elders, yeah.
Right? And so it's everything. It's your worldview.
Yeah.
It becomes what you know, even if it's wrong. It becomes what you are certain of. And I used to talk about this in terms of math, that when you build a house with Lego, you build kind of the first layer, and then on top of that another layer, and then a third layer, and they're all interlocking.
Yep.
Math is like that, but
yep.
So are we as our identity. So you build and you build and you build, and those earlier blocks are foundational to who you are. And when you learn that block is wrong, and that's what a lot of us when we learn that one thing, I don't know, it could be anything. It could be, oh my gosh, it could be anything. It could be the Crusades wasn't actually the example of Christians being as evil as, anybody else. It's not what it was. It could be climate change isn't in fact that thing. It could be that wage gap, that one of the favorite data sets, or not data sets, favorite mathy points that are thrown at kids, that there's this gender wage gap, and what are we going to do about it? Once you learn that all those blocks are wrong, you have to sort of dismantle the whole thing and rebuild. And I really hate how education has become building on this faulty foundation, because it's not just bad for the kids, it's bad for everybody. You probably I came up with this analogy about 3 weeks ago. I have ants in my kitchen, and I saw that. So you go and you buy this little plastic pod, they're supposed to go in and they get poisoned. Well, they go in, they get poisoned, they come out, and they look perfectly happy. But then you read the insert and it says, no, they went in, they're poisoned. Now they're covered with poison, and they're going to go back to their little homes and poison everyone. And I thought, that's what our schools are doing. They come in, they come in, they look happy, they get poisoned by Howard Zinn, by everything. They leave, they look perfectly fine, but they go to their communities and destroy them. And once I started seeing schools as poison that's damaged not only for those communities, but it's killing essentially the psyche, the soul of our kids, you have to combat it. And the other thing too is, if you pick a fight, whatever fight you think is important, it doesn't matter what it is. As long as the schools are going to keep cranking out in terms of hundreds of thousands of new graduates every year, you're going to have to keep refighting that fight. So the schools, the left has known this, that the schools are where to put that poison. And we have to not only cleanse that poison, but put in things that build our children rather than destroy them.
It's so interesting because, Stalin had his 5 pillars, like the family, the entertainment, the media, religion, and
right.
education. And what's fascinating to hear you talk about is that I guess this is why education was so heavily attacked, because it really touches on all of them.
That's exactly right. It's not just one of them. It's all of them. Education and the media both, but without the schools, they really can do nothing. Right? They've secularized. Even religious schools have gone, not all of them obviously, but tend left. There was a school up north, a Catholic school, that took down their statues because they might offend someone. Statues of Mary. You're a Catholic school. You're allowed, Yeah. So right. So it's being destroyed everywhere, and all those pillars and any other leftist thing you want to think about is happening through the schools. And anything. So this is why when they come out, everything they know, there's no such thing as a real family. Boys are, and it's all full on indoctrination. Science is consensus. That's one of my, as a scientist, that's particularly egregious. And to see the bad rap that scientists get, especially now during this pandemic, scientists listen to the scientists. No. Those aren't actual scientists saying this. This is science that's been corrupted, as everything has been corrupted.
Yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on, peer review and consensus. I call it like the regressionistic consensus,
right?
Because you can't have any innovation if everybody has to agree, right? I mean, usually that's how we get pioneering thought and pioneering discovery. Is right. Like, hey, wait, I have this idea, and it may be crazy that gets to be discovered. Isn't that part of the scientific method? I thought.
Yeah. One would hope.
Please tell me. I'm confused.
Makes sense to me of what you're saying. You should have peer review, of course, but we're so many generations down the path of it all being so destroyed. Another part of it that makes it difficult, you talk about innovation, the push for innovation can actually, if it's constrained by leftism, isn't going to wind up being real innovation anyway, because you are constrained. Look at in the beginning of the pandemic, within 3 days, people were emailing me about this Dr. Draoul, I think in France, who said the HCQ cocktail is the trick. That was innovative.
Right. Yeah.
In a rational world, people would have said, oh my God, this is totally the answer, not a problem anymore. We've got the cure. Can we just get back on with our lives? So he had used an anti-malarial for a new purpose, innovative, anecdotal evidence, yes, no, let's do the testing, did the testing. But as soon as Donald Trump says anything about it, it becomes this evil thing wanting to poison us all. And so the only guy actually doing the science was the guy in France. And he was so shouted down by this agenda, because what's the agenda? Fear, control, and so on. And then we hear about other cures. This is why I just, aside from how the stats on the pandemic haven't added up, the whole time I've been saying, we have cures. Why aren't we celebrating cures? In a rational world, with a media that was wanting truth, they would have been at every new discovery, they'd be saying, this is so fabulous, let's cut these,
explore it, right?
Right. Yeah. So that's when you realize how far we are from a rational world, because we have these cures. They should be celebrating. And I think back on, World War II. Anytime we won a battle, did the media just shake their heads and say, oh, that's just the president lying? It's really horrible. And, how can the media not be on your side? It's really, and we know how, because they're not on our side, because they're on the left.
So you brought up how President Trump supported it, and then, of course, everybody pounced. But what I think is really fascinating about that is that it wasn't just in this country. It was global, right?
Yes.
And, people, I hear a lot from people on the left, or, people who are apolitical, America's not that special. Like, other countries did better, or
right.
We hear a lot of this. But to me, that right there says that's indicative of something. The fact that our president denounced what could have been a global cure, or at least a treatment, something positive, and everybody jumped on it. Well, why does what our president say matter if this country is, just like everybody else? What difference does it make?
Right. And I've come back to that through this whole thing, that this is all about Trump. There would have been a pandemic except for Trump. And the only thing I can come to is a phrase that I used at our Global Freedom Conference: same stuff, different continent. The left is the left is the left. Freedom is their enemy. And the biggest bulwark against global leftism is one guy, and that's Trump. And he's our guy. But he has to be shut down. If you're in France, if you're in Germany, if you're in England, if you're in Austria, Trump is that bulwark. And a cure is also a bad thing, because the left likes control wherever they are. So their perspective is global. Our perspective is national, which is fine, because a strong America makes for stronger freedom all around the world, which we know that's not our motivation, but we know that's true. they also know it's true, and that is their motivation.
That's really interesting. You think they know it's true?
I think they absolutely know it's true.
And they want to fight it anyway.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. One of
That's
my
a
favorite.
really bold statement. And I would love you to elaborate on it, because I think for a lot of people that probably doesn't make any sense. If they know, that that's true, and they know that freedom, that he's the bulwark for freedom, and
Yeah.
they're fighting freedom. Well, why?
Yeah, they are. Because the left is the left is the left.
Yeah.
And America, a strong America, has always given hope to freedom lovers everywhere. That's what we've always been, be it, pilgrims coming here, or people looking for better markets, or swimming from Cuba, essentially swimming, boating over from Cuba. We've always been that beacon of hope and freedom, either for people physically coming here or supporting freedom fighters wherever. We've always been that. And as globalism seeks ever more power through the UN, through however they're doing it, they see more and more clearly that we are more and more the threat. As long as America stands and is strong and fights for our national sovereignty, and we support others in their struggle or whatever for national sovereignty, they can't get as strong a foothold. We heard, I've known this, and this is why my degree in international relations plays a little role in there, right? So it all comes back. But when we had our Global Freedom Conference, AFA's Global Freedom Movements Conference last October, well, we're coming up on a year, one of the things that every single freedom fighter from around the world said was, thank God for President Trump. Thank God for the United States. Not that Trump is doing anything in particular for us, but he is symbolizing the right to one's national sovereignty. And he gives us the strength to do what we're doing. And we heard this from Koreans, we heard this from Austrians, from Poles, from Brits, from Italians, from people around the world. Not that they want to join with the United States and, anything. We're not forming a global, anything, but we are that beacon, and Trump is that beacon.
I really want to emphasize that you use the word national sovereignty, because I think this is something that a lot of people really confuse. They get caught up, we've been hearing a lot that Trump is a fascist and he's Hitler, and that's the narrative that's being taught right now.
Right.
But I think that what they do, they conflate this national sovereignty that the United States have, that Trump champions, which is very different from national, takeover and imperialism, right? It's not that we want to make the world America. We want to stand for America, and we want to protect freedom elsewhere. And, for those that want it, we want to champion them in their cause, but we're not saying we want to be global America. And that is, I think it's such a strong, important distinction.
It really is, especially as Trump is Hitler, this whole complete nonsense. Honestly, nothing could be further from the truth. And it's just it's so preposterous. I can't even fathom it. He is the bulwark against those who want to. I
love Charlie Kirk said that Trump is the bodyguard for Western civilization. And I just love that. I think
that is really great.
That sums it up. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And Western Civ, is also not code for white supremacy, by the way, but it's for it's for rule of law, it's for equality under the law, it's for democracy, it's for freedoms, it's for all of that. To imagine Trump as Hitler, did anybody spews, let's just take Alyssa Milano as the most I don't know, she's the first one who pops into my head.
Yeah.
If Trump were Hitler, she'd have been disappeared a long time ago, and her family too. Just for starters, right? So
how about education? She's somebody who has clearly been through our education system.
Right.
Really
right.
used some reschooling.
Yeah. Right. And they come out, and this is AOC is my favorite example of this. They come out with this righteousness. And AOC actually, up until about a year ago, when I thought of her, I was very sad because they took this young girl who's passionate, who wants to learn, who wants to change the world, who wants to be, we all grew up wanting to be, we're going to fight for the good cause. And everything that's been put in there is all that stuff that I was citing before about education. So she comes out with everything she knows being wrong. That Lego house, all those bricks are bad bricks, but she's got such a righteousness about it and such a fluidity of speaking. And so, back to the books, she's a very good reader and she's a very good speaker. Yeah. But it's all wrong. Her heart she's been through the little ant poison, and it's like alien. All her innards aren't right innards anymore. They're all poison and evil. But she really feels she's doing all this for the right reason. And that breaks my heart. And she's just, one of bazillions of them, obviously, Alyssa Milano as well. They really feel when they stand up that they are standing up to evil because that's what they've been told.
Yeah.
And it's kind of insane to watch that. I know you fight this. I fight this. Give me one example of anything Trump did that's evil. And there's literally like, oh, his daughter is an advisor. Okay, yeah. that clearly Hitler.
Easily.
He's on his third wife. Oh, that's, yeah. Oh, that's a travesty,
He's the first, by the way.
He's what?
He's the first to have multiple marriages.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? So it makes no sense. It literally makes no sense. And when you ask, you're the bad guy. I'm the bad guy. I'm the racist. I'm now Hitler. I'm a proxy for Hitler, which is.
Yes. We have a lot of that. So
we do.
I think we do. This point you bring up about AOC and certainly Alyssa Milano, it's really tragic to me because, as you say, these people really do think they're championing for good.
Right.
They think that they think they're the beacon of light. However, they're like, in Plato's allegory of the cave, they're looking at shadows and they have no idea what truth is. And I see there are several, like we were talking about earlier, how like nothing is really black and white. There's so many layers, and it is like this onion. There's so many different rabbit holes of black holes, essentially. Because real problems. And certainly with these people being poisoned with the education, thinking that they're doing good deeds, and really they're not. But then there's some people who I think have a glimmer of something doesn't make sense, but they don't want their illusions to be shattered. That's traumatic, actually. To learn your whole foundation of, and certainly the older you get, the more traumatic it becomes. Your whole Lego house is built on a rocky foundation. Oh my goodness, what happens if there's an earthquake, a tornado? Like, I'm gone.
Right.
And what do you think is how can you, I think some people who are truly, gone, I always say, that they're gone, there's no hope there. But I think that for people, because this is this is a very long-winded way of asking the question, but I think for some people who have gone so far down, but they see a glimmer of hope, they see something doesn't make sense, they want a way out, but they're terrified. They don't want to have their whole worldview shaken. What is your I guess, answer to them? What is, or your strategy for them?
Well, just for one, just huge kudos to Brandon Strock's walkaway movement, because his page, everything is about people, like thousands a day saying, oh my gosh, this thing, that thing, the other thing opened my eyes. And Brandon Strock, perfect example, he had been told, once Trump became president, he as a gay man would be imprisoned all his life, his rights would be taken away and so on. And that didn't happen. And somebody debunked for him the Trump mocking the handicapped reporter. And I
get that from me all the time.
Right? So there's always there's a one thing. And I think everybody's one thing is different. For him, it was that. For a lot of people, it was the Kavanaugh hearings. For a lot of people, just from the past, it was the Clarence Thomas hearings. We don't know what that one thing is going to be, but and as you say, some people are beyond whatever. They're just not thinkers. They'd rather cling to ignorance because tearing down that house is too difficult. But I think we each have a role to play in not letting things go unaddressed, unconfronted. That doesn't mean we have to beat everything to the bitter end, but we can bring up things. I don't know. There's always stuff that we can bring up, from benign things like asking for a plastic straw and saying, as soon as China, gets its act together, then I'll hand in my plastic straws. Right? There's always a way. It can be benign. It can not. It doesn't. Can be whatever you want. But I think we need to. The left has made every single thing a battlefront. Everything. And so we need to meet them on that battlefront wherever we're comfortable, because you never know. If you think about it, I've had someone say it's the drip, drip, drip method. It's like Chinese water torture or building the Grand Canyon, your preferred one. If we each contribute a drip to people, it accumulates, and you don't know which is going to be that one that's going to flip someone. You just don't know. Yeah. And we imagine that they're going to look at us and say, oh my God, you're so right. I never saw it that way. Thank you. That's never how it's going to be. And you also don't know if it's the person you're talking to, either on Facebook or in real, who you've gotten to think, or a bystander. You just don't know. So what do we need to do? I had a strategy I developed, probably 10 years ago now, where I was living in a blue state, Rhode Island, and I traveled here, another blue state, and everyone around me always assumes that I'm on the left, in the supermarket, wherever. So my new tactic was assume that everyone I'm talking to is on the right.
I love it.
And let them claw their way back, right. Whatever I'm so excited about this new Supreme Court Justice nominee. I can't even stand it, and let them claw their way back. So That's an easy one, because you're not angrier in their face. You're just being, excited about something. Can you believe Trump moved the embassy to Jerusalem? My gosh, this is like the greatest thing. He's clearly the best friend Israel has ever had. And let them fight back.
I love that, because that's really having, pride in your conviction. That's all it is. It's just standing by it and, leading with it and not being ashamed. Yeah. So that's a great next segue. So what are your thoughts on this whole, I know they now have a term for it, the cancel culture. I don't see this as being new at all. I feel like this has been, hundreds of years of leftists. I mean, Herbert Marcuse had a term, liberating tolerance, which is literally what cancel culture is.
Right.
So what is your thoughts on, now we have a term and, they can, identify it, and what is your thoughts on people fighting against it? Just your thoughts on it.
Well, it has been hundreds
about it, but yeah.
It's not new. It is a new way of calling it. I call it purging. These are purges that happen, and that is really not new. And we've always, not we, America, but there's always been purges of people you disagree with. I'll just, this is a Stalinist thing. Are we carting people off to the gulag? No. But if you make it impossible for people to work, how many people have lost their jobs aside from me? We're seeing this all the time. You can't work, or if you do, you have to keep your thoughts to yourself. So there's thought patrol, thought police, and this is not a way for Americans to live. So yes, cancel culture, it's obviously the left. The right doesn't do this. We're open to discourse. But they are purges, and it is dangerous, and it is damaging. And America is where people came for not having that, in order to speak their minds. My dad came here from Germany after the war. He grew up in Berlin while Hitler was rising, and during the war, he came and just loved how you can say anything. I would ask him in later years after my mom died, do you think about going back to Germany? And just absolutely not. The air is different here. There's a freedom. But with cancel culture, one feels it less and less, that freedom. When I was teaching, and you knew not to speak up in the faculty lounge or anywhere about your perspective, because you just don't. You want to have a congenial experience with your colleagues, let alone not get fired.
Which you know all about, yeah.
Yeah, but it's not just me. I mean, Douglas Murray, yours and my favorite person, Peter Thiel, gay multi-gazillionaire, who then is when it comes out for being for Trump, well, you're not really a gay man. Jermaine,
right, and you're not black either, so
right, exactly. So they're very quick to cancel strictly according to ideology. I mean, look at our Supreme Court Justice nominee, ACB, who is everyone they claim to want. Strong woman, family, has it all, career, under her own abilities, not by sleeping her way to the top or being married to the president of the United States, anything like that. Full on everything that we're supposed to want and aspire to.
Children from Haiti. Yep. Mm-hmm. Adopted 2 children from Haiti.
Right. How perfect is that, right? Every single box, but the one box that's really everything to the left is that she's on the right. And we saw this with Sarah Palin. All the boxes, every box, all that intersectionality stuff literally goes out the window if you're on the right. Literally, she could be a lesbian, quadruplegic, it doesn't matter. If she's on the right, she's got to be taken down. And it's an astounding thing.
Yeah.
That right, they claim to want diversity.
Yeah.
But what's the point of diversity if we all think the same?
Right. They want the appearance of diversity. They want you to look at something that looks diverse, but they don't want any diversity of thought.
All about surface, which is what they say they don't want either, Right. It's an astounding time that we're living in. Now with this active anti-racism, it's not enough to just not be racist. You have to be actively, so am I supposed to marry a black man? Is that really, I think that's what they literally want. Except that would be wrong.
But then that would be wrong too, because then he's a race traitor.
That's right.
Right? Yeah. That's what Candace Owens being told, that, she's a race traitor.
Right, of course.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So there's literally no winning. There's literally no winning if you're on the right. Literally none.
I have 2 questions for you. One is when when this happened to you with your job, were you surprised, or was it kind of expected? So we'll do that one first. And then my second question is, you talked about education and how it shapes your psyche. I want to hear your thoughts on teaching this, critical race theory to children and what it does to their psyche.
Yeah, so horrible.
First.
Which first?
Whichever you want first.
First. I'll do first. Because that's the only way my brain can work. Was I surprised? I guess all of us always know that these things can happen. But I was surprised in that the school where I was let go from was my school as a kid. And I thought that them actually knowing me, I didn't think that would give me a pass, she's been around forever, whatever. No, I thought that them actually knowing me would make a difference, that whatever labels, you were talking before about binary, I thought that surely knowledge of me would at least get them to see. Person. Right?
Yeah.
And I'm a really good math teacher, and my students loved me. So I thought that those things would be a little bit of
they would matter.
That they would matter. Great. I was going to say that they would protect me, but you're exactly right, that they would matter. My love of the school, my support of the school, how I spoke about the school, always, with one exception. I loved being there. There was a lot of discontent at the school, and to the kids, I always supported it. So and my love of Western civilization, I learned there.
Yeah.
So I really, we all know we're at risk, right? Anybody on the right, we're at risk unless we're in a place that's specifically on the right. And this place was pretty ambiguous. But I really thought I'd be safer because they know me. But what I failed to recognize, among other things, is that my being nice and good and a good teacher and a compassionate person and loving and all of that, that's in a way exactly why they had to let me go. Because if the narrative is everyone on the right is Hitler, is evil, wants you all dead, wants your grandparents to die in the street or whatever, that's the narrative. I am that one case, or a case, but in the school, one case that puts the lie to all of that. And once you see that it's not true in all cases, you were asking before, how do we get people to realize? I was kind of one of those ways, just in my very being.
Yeah.
So a nice conservative is something that has to be purged. It has to be purged. Because once a student learns that we're not all evil, they may question that we're all evil.
Right.
And that's not okay. So my very being, I thought that those things that would protect me, who I am, as you say, knowing who I am, turns out that in a way that was
the very thing
that brought me down. Right. Very weird and obviously disappointing. My students then learned, though, that not the lesson the school wanted them to learn, but they learned that when the left says they believe in diversity, they're lying. Because all their other teachers would talk about, Trump, I mean, literally, I'm not even making this up. Trump is the worst thing to have happened to this country in its entire history. This was like a year after he became president. The morning after the election, Other teachers said, I feel like we just had another 9/11 attack. My students told me this. I said, really? He said 9/11, like terrorists flew planes into our buildings, killing thousands. Yes, that's what he said. Teachers would wear #resist. So you're allowed to be on the left, but you're not allowed. Not that I did anything equivalent. My defense of Trump was, how about if we see what he does as president before we get all excited? So
how about we let the evidence present itself?
Right?
Yeah.
Right? I know. So they hire me to because of my background, science, math. I'm a woman in STEM and all of this stuff, except you act in accordance with that, and that gets you shut out too. Yeah. So yeah, just absolutely crazy. What does it do to your psyche? Learning all of this, growing, what my kids, what my students just learned, and they told me this, was keep your head down or you get fired if you have a difference of opinion. That's the other thing. The school presupposed that all students, everybody, with the sole exception of evil Dr. Siegmund, were on the left. But these kids who said, Mr. So-and-so said that Trump is just like Hitler, there were a bunch that were on the right, of students who were on the right. So how do you feel when your faculty says that the man you're very excited to have as president, who your parents support, who is nothing but pro-America, right? How do you feel when your teacher says something like this to you? So inauguration day, this was great. I had a student, they all wore uniforms, right? But some, there's always little ways you can push. She wore one red sock and one green sock on inauguration day. And I said,
Punky Brewster, years later.
Well, right. But I said, because it's Christmas. And she said, that's exactly right.
Oh,
so,
wow.
Yeah. So they tried to signal, I mean, how Soviet is this stuff, right? This was her little subversive messaging of this is a good day. And she couldn't tell other teachers, but she could tell me. Wow. And so what does it do to their psyche when people like me are purged? This is a horrible thing. But then, me aside, if you're reading Howard Zinn and everything you learn about the country that you love, well, you may feel ambivalent, you don't really know, but the country that you live in is nothing but pure evil. That's going to be that self-destroying, soul-destroying, shame-building poison. Again, Germany is just now starting to put aside their national shame. Should they have had national shame? Oh, yes. There was a lot of very bad stuff, and that's legitimate, even though it wasn't everybody. And you can't say we were all, guilty Nazis, or you can't say that. But for that nation, there's shame there.
Sure.
We shouldn't. Now, nobody should make this stuff up. So I think that all the rioting, Black Lives Matter, the burning, all of that is a direct result of this poisoning. The critical race theory, the Howard Zinning, all of it. If what goes in, again, it comes back to that poison. If what goes in is all that poison and things to be ashamed of, be it that you have a mommy and a daddy, which these days, that's, nuclear family is, how white is that, right? So spelling correctly.
It should just be biology, right? How is that attributed to being a white thing? That's biological. Right?
It's so, all that list that
take a mother and a father to produce a child,
It's astounding. And people say, well, I didn't even promote conservatism in the classroom. Well, yes and no. In statistics, a lot of statistics, the basic stuff is, you always find one of the most basic examples you can use. One is flipping a coin head tail. Another one is X and Y chromosomes. And I would joke, I said, I'm surprised they still let us use this textbook. because this sort of would indicate that there's only two genders. Right? And we're not long for this. This is not going to be allowed for very long. So yes, is that a conservative point of view? My answer to that is, how crazy that you can have a conservative point of view and a leftist point of view about gender, about sex, about boys and girls,
about things that are literally biological.
It's literally biological. So I am waiting with bated breath for new stats books to come out that will have cleansed that stuff right out of there.
Yes, for sure. Well, one thing I do want to address, to back up a little bit, is you said some of the responses from your students, that the lesson they learned from your experience was, if we have a dissenting view, that we need to keep quiet.
Right.
And what a travesty, because you think, personally, when I think about education, I think if education teaches you nothing else, barring all of the science, math, history, all the things we should learn, I think the fundamental foundational thing that education should teach is critical thinking. And it sounds like it's shutting that down. If you can't dissent, if you can't question, if you can't voice an opposing opinion, or even question, a narrative, then where's the critical thinking?
It's not allowed. You're exactly right. And no matter what they say on their website, we promote critical thinking. The reality is that they don't. You're allowed to have critical thinking as long as it leads to women have always suffered. Their racism is systemic. We're contributing to climate change. The whole AOC gamut of stuff, right? Critical thinking is supposed to get you to there, period, which is obviously not critical thinking. To say,
if you already know where the end result is, then you're not thinking critically.
Exactly right. And even I taught math, science, whatever, to say, we had ice ages. Why don't we anymore? Oh, was it an SUV thing? Right? That's critical thinking, getting them to see that. Or I would say, if they really believe the oceans are rising, why do they all want to live on the beach? To me, that's getting them to think critically.
Yeah.
But, again, I think about that and I think, no wonder they had to get rid of me. Is that promoting my conservatism? No, it is, though, offering a different perspective from the one true narrative.
Right.
And they didn't cite any of this in getting rid of me. But those are the things that I would think I have to say them because critical thinking. I have to say them because I'm a scientist. I have to say them because I want to model good problem-solving skills. And to me, reality, it's always better to deal with reality. It's always better
easier but better.
Right, exactly right. And Snickers bars, if you wrote on the outside, Snickers bars has all the required protein, no fat, no sugar, no nothing bad, and just a whole lot of really good things on the label, I might choose to eat more Snickers bars because of what they're telling me. But the reality is it's still got all those bad ingredients, So if you package things in untruths, it doesn't serve anybody well. And my goal as a teacher, it's always to prepare kids to be best, to use Melania's phrase, to be the best that they can be, and to be best prepared for the world. And being best prepared for the world isn't where everything that they know is wrong.
Right.
And that's really horrible. I just suffered through that so much, where, again, it's the poison. I don't believe in poisoning them when they come to school. I believe in empowering them with the truth, with inquisitiveness, with problem-solving skills, with I told them this all the time. If you learn nothing from me, learn to be skeptical. Don't believe everything I tell you.
Yeah.
Always question. And we've spoken about that too, you and I. Healthy skepticism. That's what science is.
Oh.
Math is, what do we know? Where are we trying to get to? What are we trying to figure out? In all things, be skeptical.
Absolutely.
Which is, we can't have that at school. So what does it do to their soul? Watching me, at least they learned which side silence is.
Yeah. And
so when
this new, Trump just started this 1776 commission, which is incredible. I'm super excited about, to combat the 1916 project.
1619, yeah.
Yes. I'm always dyslexic with numbers. It's so weird.
Well, 6 and yeah.
Yeah, I start and then really weird. But I think people, when you were talking about earlier, people, because of this poison, they think that they're coming from a place of compassion. And they think they're doing something that truly is good. And I think that's what people think with critical race theory. They think, well, people have been oppressed and, we need to teach them about that. But I think there's something very crushing to the soul about that. I think that what have you seen with kids learning this type of?
Oh, it's absolutely crushing. I mean, as soon as you start teaching kids to be ashamed of things that they have nothing to do with, and at the same time, you never shame kids for things that they actually did have something to do with. Like, there's a lot of things that kids do that they should be ashamed of, cheating or, lying or social bullying on social media or whatever, that should mortify them. No shame on that. But to teach kids shame over things that they have no control over is soul crushing. And to make it their life goal to, this mea culpa of white guilt, white privilege, check your white privilege. No. And to me, one of the number one things that we should teach everyone always is gratitude. I have white privilege, whatever that means. I'm grateful for everything I've been given, always, always, always. And that a school doesn't operate from that as its, leading foot, to every morning emphasize, what are you grateful for today? And I don't care what color you are. If you're here, you are really lucky. And I mean, among the luckiest people who've ever lived in the history of all time, you're really lucky. That doesn't mean that everything is perfect and stuff can really be horrible for you, obviously. But still, to think about gratitude first as just your starting premise. What does it do to instead lead with shame? I think what we're doing to our kids is beyond horrible. It's just beyond horrible. We see the damage that parents can do in shaming their children, right? About whatever. Horrible. People are in therapy for their whole lives. But if everything is based on shame, everything that you are is based on shame, it is child abuse. It's abuse by those people who are entrusted in doing the opposite. As a teacher, they are my charges. They are, my heart is with them. I would lie in bed at night thinking, oh, I wonder if, that thing that I said to Bobby, did he misunderstand it? I just don't, did I hurt his feelings? And so, you don't want to do that. But if literally your goal is to set out to make them feel, it's, what kind of person does that? I can't even understand how. And even if it's not guilt, but they break kids up into your affinity groups, what happened to e pluribus unum? We're all Americans. We're all in this together. everyone's got good stuff and bad stuff, and let's just be a community. The school is community.
Yeah.
But they don't. They have to divide everybody up. And back to when I was so naive and I saw them doing this, I just never understood. Why would you do that?
Right.
So again, it's not a political thing to my thinking, except it is. Yes. Because the right doesn't do that and the left does. I was actually asked at my old school to come up with an anti-bullying program. And again, this is before my political awakening. And I said, that doesn't make any sense to me, anti-bullying. I don't understand what that is. Seems to me you should have core values, and then if they are violated, then you punish the child. But I don't know, what do you mean when you say bullying? So I said respect, responsibility, kindness, and integrity. There you go, done. And if somebody doesn't do those things or behaves in a way that's, that breaks one of the, you were unkind or you were irresponsible or disrespectful, now we'll address it. So it really is a matter of, it's that first, those foundational building blocks: shame, gratitude, anti something, pro something, pride, shame. And that seems to me to be some of the core things. And so 1776, back to your question, 1776 rebuilds pride. 1619 is rooted in shame. But even more importantly, 1619 is rooted in lies, and 1776 is rooted in truth. How, just from the get-go, can we, even the person who, I don't remember her name on purpose, there's Kristen Hannah Jones or something like that, who came up with 1619, which ironically is the New York Times. So we were talking about those leftist things, perfect intersection of education and media, right? Beautiful juxtaposition in intersection of Marxism. Even she said, no, it wasn't supposed to be a curriculum, it's not really historical. It's just another way of looking at things. They don't care. How about if we do get to the truth? So Mary Grabar, who wrote the Debunking Howard Zinn book, has done some of the most important recent work. And ugly swimming in that swamp of Howard Zinn. She was on the White House panel, spoke on the panel at the White House Conference on American History on Constitution Day. She's going to be speaking at Hillsdale tomorrow. Getting rid of all that guilt-based, anti-historical poison is so key. It's so key. So when the president made his announcement, I just couldn't even believe it, because that is the root of everything. So AFA,
yeah,
we are doing something along the same lines. Yeah. So when I heard it, my first thought was, oh, great, now we don't have to do this because the president's got, no. At least, the president's going to do it. But it shows that we are definitely seeing things in the same way, or I'll frame it differently. I'm so glad the president understands the real problem the way we do. He's now awakened to the truth that we all have known, which is it's about the schools. It's about shame in the schools. So AFA is doing a Liberty Index where we're assessing and evaluating schools according to their ethos, according to what history they teach, what they think is important. Are they pro-freedom, which goes hand in hand with truth, or are they anti-freedom, which is Marxist and based on lies? So that's exciting.
Yes, no, it's super exciting. And so when you say, which is in accordance with freedom and truth,
yeah,
that's so powerful, so profound, and so true, to be redundant.
Right?
But I think so that I think it brings up a really interesting question about, this seems to be a really big dichotomy between the way the left, I always do this, the left and the right see teaching history. Besides the fact that one is teaching lies and the other is telling the truth. But there's also some belief, and we're seeing this with the tearing down statues, which also isn't new. We've seen this in lots of other countries. But they do because they want to erase the parts of history that they're ashamed of. Instead of, you talked about gratitude, I think there's so much power in looking at, no, we didn't necessarily do things perfectly, but look how far we've come. And
absolutely.
Right. So what do you think about, the importance of teaching kids even the bad stuff?
Definitely teach kids the bad stuff, because for a couple reasons, many reasons, no country is perfect. We've always worked towards being better. The promise of the Constitution is something that we're always working to improve. But I also think that's kind of the whole thing writ large, or the macro. But redemption is important for humans, for we as human beings as well. That we should be accepting of ours and our friends, our people we walk among. We're imperfect, and to tear down people, including ourselves, for mistakes that we have made is truly horrible. We need to be forgiving of ourselves. It's not to say we erase what happened in the past. I did that really bad thing. Forgiveness is about what you do next, and gratitude is part of. One thing to be grateful for is our personal growth. One thing to be grateful for is, as you say, growth of this country. We at one time we were this, and now we're that, and we just had a African American as president. I think we've come kind of a long way. Carol Swain knows Condoleezza Rice, whatever we think of her politics. She was having this conversation where she says, people are telling us, America, we're really just as evil as we always were. She said, I'm from the South. Don't go telling me nothing's changed. Don't go telling me. We grow and grow and grow. But hopefully we grow in accordance with, I would just say, all men are created equal. We hold these truths to be not with inequality under the law in order to right past wrongs. No, the goal should be equality. I'm such a believer in Martin Luther King. Let's get to where skin color doesn't matter. And back to what we were saying before, those affinity groups and how diversity looks, that should play literally zero role. If you're aiming for real diversity, not, as you said, they just want it as how people look. No. It should be actual insofar as diversity is a goal, which I don't even understand that. Can't we just be?
Just and be authentic and
just,
yeah.
Right. But when you tear down statues, what you're teaching is there's no redemption as a country. And then maybe there's no redemption as an individual too. And yes, historically, people have always torn down statues, but it's usually a symbol of conquest. Yes, destroying history, but also we're tearing down your statue and we're going to erect our own. And what's interesting about what's happening now is it's not about that. It's just about chaos. And it's not, they started off with it being Confederate generals, but they've been destroying anything of anybody. Miguel de Cervantes, or Black Regiment. There was a monument to a Black regiment. Why would you tear that down? So it's just chaos. It's destroying history, period. That nothing that happened before today, now, nothing before matters. What I say matters, and nothing before my saying it matters. So there's this ahistoricism, And I don't even know to what extent they're looking to the future. It's really about now, because they don't talk about their children. We're the ones who talk about our children. They don't talk about their children. It's now. Everything is now. There's no building. There's only destroying. We're the builders. And in a way, when all of the rioting and stuff was happening, and I saw this, one of the more warming thoughts amid all the nightmare was, they're going to destroy, but it is we who build. And so it's not like they're going to destroy and then they're going to build. No, they don't build. We're the builders.
Right.
They've done, I said this in the Long March thing. They're the ones who take an institution that's been created. It's been created, and they suck out its original purpose to educate, to worship God, to dispense the news. They suck all the original thing out and replace it like a virus with their own agenda. We're the ones who build the institution and the purpose and the functionality and the bureaucracy and the, all the regulatory whatever. They suck it out and then they replace it with their own thing. They're not creators. They are the virus. So a lot of bad things I've said about them.
For our current time.
Right?
With the virus, yeah. I
exactly.
We kept calling it the communist virus disease, but yeah.
It really, in more ways than one, in this institutional thing, I just see things that way. They took a healthy cells and they take their little receptors or whatever and put their own replicating virus in there.
No, I absolutely see that, and I love that analogy. Absolutely. I hear from people when you try to illuminate this. One of the things I'm hearing a lot of is that's just a right-wing conspiracy theory, and it doesn't exist. Do you think that stems from just an attempt to just shut down an argument? Do you think it comes from the media's disinformation, or do you think it comes from our education system not teaching real history, or all of the above, or none? Yeah.
Absolutely all of the above, because they actually said this. If you read Adorno and Marcuse and Gramsci and you read them, it's literally in their own words. I'm not making this up. This isn't, the ant poison one is my observation, okay? And the virus analogy. But this is exactly what they said. It doesn't require a rocket scientist or any kind of a scientist to say, this looks like what they're doing. No. They said this is what they're doing. And this is what they're doing. And now we see that they said they were going to do it. Now they did it. And this is where we are. And they did it because it works. And the real problem isn't, they can do whatever and we can do whatever. But the problem is that they've done whatever and we've walked away. We just walk away. I wouldn't work in journalism. It's all left wing. I wouldn't become a teacher. We walk away. We've just ceded ground. And that's how we've gotten here. They had a plan. It's called the Long March Through the Institutions for a reason, right?
Yes.
They didn't take the immediate, we want things right now. And Marxist revolution, it wasn't the middle class that was, the workers of the world weren't uniting, because actually the workers were pretty happy, life was good. So they had to do it another way, and they set out to do it another way. It's not a conspiracy on our part to say that they're doing this. It was a conspiracy on their part.
They literally conspired.
To do this. They literally did.
Yeah, Willie Munzenberg said, we're going to make the West so corrupt it stinks. And that's how we're going to tear it down.
And exactly. So how can we point them to the truth? Give them these books, point them to Trevor Loudon, point them to Mike Walsh, or the, as you say, the primary sources. Obviously, David Horowitz is one of the best on this. I've just been watching the videos from our Long March conference and getting it all together in a book. And just one person after another, they said they were going to do this, and they did this, and this is what we're seeing. They really were the conspirators, and this is what we're left with. They were the conspirators, and we just kept retreating.
Yeah.
But those videos are great, by the way. They're on the American Freedom Alliance YouTube channel. We have a playlist, The Long March Through the Institutions. It's astounding. And it was astounding a year ago, but now with the virus and with the riots, you see how the damage that was only kind of theoretical, we're seeing played out on our streets. And
yeah.
It's really, again, it's not just scary as a nation and as a culture and as a community, but the poison in these kids' brains just absolutely kills me.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm going to play a little like hypothetical game.
Oh, fun.
You see if, we have the debates tomorrow, if we have debates tomorrow on your birthday, what do you see playing out going forward? Do you see, let's play the two scenarios. What do you see for the country if Biden gets in office and wins? And what do you see if Trump has another 4 years? And what do you think the likelihood of each scenario is?
So scary to contemplate anything other than Trump winning. I think numbers-wise, Trump absolutely wins. Fraud-wise, absolutely scares the daylights out of me. We know they literally stop at nothing. We know this. Was it Hillary who said, don't concede no matter what? And yet Trump is saying, we'll have to see. Different states are saying we're going to count ballots up until, we don't even know how long after the election. So I don't even know how you deal with that. I really don't. And states do have the right to create the conditions under which they hold elections. I'd like to see a limit on that, because that really does scare me. How long is it going to be? I think we're going to have mayhem for quite a while. And at what point do you start even to announce? I don't know. Assuming everything goes and at one point in time, Trump is declared the winner. 4 more years, I think so much great stuff can happen. So much already has. I think in terms of education, we can do a big cleaning. Department of Ed needs to be resolved in some way. People say shut it down. That's probably a good idea. I'd like to see bigger efforts at school choice, obviously. I'd like to see, there's just so much. I would like to see more globalist agendas being undermined one way or another. I'd like to see science return to science. I'd like to see immigration being dealt with in a real way. Yes, the wall, but let's actually look at numbers. I'd like to see birthright citizenship dealt with. That was an interpretation. There are other interpretations. I'd like to see that. So I think 4 more years of being able to strengthen the country, get medical choice back. I'd like to see Obamacare dismantled more. I'd like to see much more in the way of open markets. I can't even believe I left this one out. China needs to be dealt with.
That was good. That was going to be my next question.
Yeah, China absolutely needs to be dealt with. The
elephant in the room, yeah.
Right. I mean, that is gigantic. They're the number one national security threat, obviously, but also, and in part because it would be great to bring manufacturing back here. So get the whole supply chain thing fixed, not just about our medical everything, but just deal with China, for heaven's sake.
I have a question for you about China, because I think China is fascinating and terrifying currently for this country and for the future of the world, actually.
Yeah.
But what's really interesting about China is we talked a little bit about, the long march through the institutions, and we talked about the cultural Marxism and the education system and how, definitely Marxism plays a huge role in that. China is interesting in that I think it has a different but equally a dangerous, pernicious threat for this country and for freedom globally.
Yeah.
And yet, I personally, and the evidence has, remains to be seen on all of this, but, I years ago had a theory about Iran and Russia and their united front. And I remember talking to my dad about this. He's like, Courtney, you're crazy. Nobody thinks that. This is a totally asinine theory. And I said, I could be wrong. It's really gut intuition, just based on what I know about them, Turned out there was some validity to it. But I see this again with China. I think that they're aligning with these Marxists within and externally. What are your theories on some of this?
Absolutely. When we talk about Marxism, it's kind of shorthand. Marxism and Maoism were very aligned. We're used to sort of looking in the European direction, but towards Asia, absolutely. Mao, the left is the left, and they have aligned ideologically. But when, in the beginning of the pandemic, I remember hearing Eric Garcetti was going to consult with China about how to deal with the pandemic. Are you absolutely out of your mind? But the left is the left, and they will align, they will ally. And again, we're Americans, and China is not our friend. And to ally an American elected officials with the enemy it's astounding. And one of the things that we're seeing in America right now with the pandemic, and not the virus itself, but how it's being addressed, and the riots, it's all leftism from China. I mean, obviously the virus came from China, but how it was dealt with was coming from China as well. The rioting, all of it, it's the left is the left. China most certainly plays a role in all of this. I think we've learned we can't believe anything at all that comes out of China. Nothing, either that it was bats. It was bat soup. Remember that old line? It's bat soup from the market. It was just this spontaneous mutation, please.
And again, we're anti-science, even though that's not scientifically possible, but somehow we're anti-science. Right.
We're the anti-science ones. And then I found this out. I think you were on the call. They didn't even have bats at the Wuhan market. So it's just scientifically not possible, and lies, and just on. And really, how stupid do you think we all are? Pretty stupid. So yeah, the virus, how it's been dealt with, all of it. But I guess, thinking back on my concerns at the beginning of all of this, the pandemic, I thought by now stuff would have been opened, but I also thought there would be more of I thought there might be a follow-up by now from China, taking advantage of our weakness.
Interesting.
And may still come. Mm-hmm. But I remember thinking, with the economy tanking, which it has, changes in defense spending and weakening on that front, I thought all that would happen, and it's not.
Do you think that they're possibly waiting to see what happens with the election?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that that's true.
Yeah.
Waiting to see what, but yes, but that's kind of why I thought it would happen sooner.
Yeah. Okay.
Um,
I
and we're not even October barely yet, so still time.
time.
The Chinese October surprise, right?
Yeah. Let's hope not, but there is time. I also wonder if in their eyes we've been weakened anyway. I do wonder how much of that plays a role in their planning and what they thought they would do and what they are going to do. Yeah.
Yeah, I think one's vision of that depends on where you sit. Where I love this phrase, where you stand depends on where you sit. Us in California, I think I'm feeling we're very weak because in California, we're really under this totalitarian regulatory regime. But elsewhere in the country, I don't think so. And so they may have that sense that we're not as weak as it feels to me. And much as the Democrats have faulted Trump for everything, but especially his handling of the virus, his perspective may also, again, projecting strength. I think you've got to project strength, and that may have helped too. In the beginning, he wasn't as much, I thought, but I think he is more. And I think a president who projects strength, this is another reason I'm not that worried about the election. A president who projects strength, I think people still will want over a president who projects nothing but weakness. You asked about the other possible scenario, and I just can't.
I can't entertain it.
I really can't. I think the country is over. I think everything that we've said about being that beacon for freedom, he's already said no masks for 3 months, take away your guns. We've just said everything, where even Obama, when he ran as a moderate. Many of us knew better, but he still ran as a moderate. Biden is going as far left as he possibly can, and we know it's not going to be Biden for more than 15 nanoseconds anyway. It's going to be Kamala, who was roundly rejected by the Democrat voters, but embraced by the party. So how can you, as a Democrat, this is part of my strategy now. I don't need to convince people to vote for Trump, but I do want to shame them out of shame. I think it is a useful tool. Shame them out of voting for a man who should be spending his last years in peace with his family, and not vote for Kamala, who you all rejected already anyway, who's literally accomplished nothing on her own, and who hates Black men, and who hates the truth, and just on and on, who's done disservice to women everywhere by her career path. So that's my election strategy, but because I believe it, and to have them at the helm, I think unbelievable global mayhem will happen, not just here. Here, when Trump wins, there will be civil war on the ground by the left. Biden winning, all those things we talked about earlier, Trump being a beacon to freedom lovers everywhere. I think the deflation of all freedom-loving individuals, they're all just going to, the air is going to go out of them. And people say we don't like America to be the world's policeman or whatever. We shouldn't be, this unipolar whatever. I'd rather it be us than anyone. And if it's not us, it will be someone. And if it's not us, it will be China. And nobody's more excited about Biden winning than China. Yep. So
if that shouldn't be a sign.
Right. So I think we're destroyed from within. The Constitution's down the toilet. Destroyed from without. Absolutely terrifying. There's a show, Man in the High Castle. The premise, I think it was from a Philip K. Dick short story. The premise is the Axis won World War II, and now America's divided. The eastern portion is under German occupation and the western is under Japanese occupation. It's utterly unwatchable as far as I'm concerned because of how potentially realistic it is. And I think with a Biden win, we wouldn't be the German part as much as the Japanese part. And it's really very chilling. The destruction that man did as vice president and the things that he played a part in as senator, the Clarence Thomas hearings is just one of a billion examples. School shootings happen in large part because of legislation that he pushed. The man is a danger to everyone, and that's when he had all his marbles. And now a marbleless Joe Biden is Kamala Harris. Yeah. And my God, for the first woman president to be that one is just excruciating
to women. I think, but
yeah, really, really horrible. So I'm not even going to think about it any more than I have. Trump for 4 more. I'm excited about positioning Kristi Noem for 2024.
Yes, I like that. Do you think Biden will debate tomorrow?
That's a great question. We're getting 11th hour here. I didn't think he'd make it this long.
Right.
I posited this, I've been thinking about this, that they have been slowly changing his, is it a circadian rhythm, his mental inner clock, so that tomorrow at 4 will be like first thing in the morning for him. I think they're going to try to push him out there now.
Right.
I didn't think it a week ago, but I do now. Will he make it the whole time? We were placing bets the other night. I just hope, however it goes, we see them both with their true colors.
Yeah.
I want to see Trump as the alpha leader, America loving, where my policies are good for all of us. Mm-hmm. Speaking about we and we and we, which is what he does. And I want to see him treat Biden as he had treated Hillary, yet with the asides, you'd be in jail. I want to see him provoke Biden. I don't want Biden to provoke Trump. I want Trump to keep his cool, and I want Biden to really show us what he's made of, because we know what he's made of. If he didn't have help, he'd still have a mask hanging off one ear or completely covering his face. He can't string sentences together. He does not love this country. He loves power. I want to see both of their true colors.
Yeah.
That's what I want. So we'll see. I don't know. Will he collapse? I mean, anything can happen. We learned that watching Ron Paul the other day. Right? It was really just, oh my gosh, just to watch it. So I don't want anything like that ever to happen, ever. But I do want to see them. I want to see them at the podium showing how they would be as president. We know how one of them is. I want to see how the other one would be.
Yeah. And in a forum where truth can prevail, because it's not pre-televised. It's not, that this is just candid debate. So
right. As the world is. When you're president, a lot of it is staged, obviously, but the real life decisions is you, yourself, your brain, and we need to see how Biden's works.
Yes, absolutely.
And I just hope it's revealed.
For sure.
I hope it's revealed. I hear that he's, what is it, there's a word for it, tapping, or by 10 o'clock in the morning, he's done with whatever he does, Joe Biden?
Oh, yes, right. That he doesn't campaign after 10. I think that's what it is. He won't
Right. And maybe he's debate prepping. That's a job I would not want, prepping Joe Biden for a debate. But
I don't know if he, president seems to be kind of a full-time job. I'm not sure how we're, he can do it from the basement too.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. President, it's full-time job, and you need to be that guy who takes that 3 a.m. phone call.
Yeah. From within and from our adversaries and from our allies.
Exactly right. All of it. And 4 more years of Trump as president would be such a great thing for America. Even forgetting about Biden, 4 more years of Trump would be amazing for America and for freedom lovers around the world. We don't want people to be like America or to be part of America, but we do want to support those who want the same freedoms that we have. And he's the guy who's helping that happen.
Absolutely. Well,
we're a blessed nation.
We really are. And I think that's what needs to be taught.
Yeah.
That's what, there is no other country like ours. There's no country with our Constitution, with our history, with our freedoms. Yeah, it is unique. And, that's what I keep arguing to people who argue against American exceptionalism. That it's not a theory, it's not egocentric or, ethocentric. It's based on evidence,
And it doesn't mean we're perfect.
No.
It doesn't. We're flawed because humans are flawed. End of story. But there's no country like us. There's no country that's been born out of an ideology. Well, we were the first. Since then, there have been. But we are unique. We are exceptional. And anybody who's here should be unbelievably grateful. And if you're not, do your research and find out where you'd be happier, because my bet is there's not going to be somewhere, unless it really is just all about, I don't know, surfing. That's a dumb example. You want to live near Kilimanjaro, or there may be reasons, but if freedom is your thing and becoming the best, having the best, freest life, that's here.
Absolutely. We've covered a lot. I want to leave you with anything else that you want to add. Definitely tell people where to find you, and, the Liberty Index to look for.
Yeah, so AmericanFreedomAlliance.org, and find our Facebook page, and Liberty Index has a Facebook page now too. So that's all about education, and of course our YouTube channel, YouTube American Freedom Alliance. So great to talk to you, Courtney. Really fun.
Thank you.
A real pleasure.
Thank you.